everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about life in Switzerland. Maybe you already know that I'm a Turkish woman living in Switzerland near Zurich area, and we are about to move out from this place to live in another country and have another adventure. But before we left, I wanted to make this video. If you're considering to move to Switzerland or you're just here and you want to know a little bit more about life here in this beautiful country. Let's start talking about how I got here. I'm obviously not a European Union citizen. That makes life a little harder when it comes to moving around in Europe. I came here with college. I did my second master's here in the University of Zurich. I studied cancer biology, if you were curious about that. So I applied for a student visa to come here, which gave me 2 years of residence permit. I didn't have a permit to work here, but I could live here and go to my studies, and that's how I got to Switzerland. And last year, in August, I was lucky enough to get married to the love of my life, who is a German citizen. And after the wedding, Switzerland gave me a 5-year permit to work and live in Switzerland, and that's why I'm still here. I'll leave in the description box the links to the most popular universities in Zurich area. Like I said, I know here in this region what things are like, so I'll leave those links down if you're considering to apply for a master or a PhD or a bachelor's degree. You can go ahead and check what they require for you to apply. But I can already tell you this, University of Zurich, they give classes for the master students on Mondays and Tuesdays, and there are no classes on the other days of the week, so you can potentially have a part-time job if that's something you're worried about, because life here is really expensive. That is something you can totally do. The classes take about 2 hours, and on Mondays you can take up to 4 or 5 classes, so the schedule can get really intense and busy, and the classes are not easy. They don't have midterms here. They only have final exams, which was interesting for me because I'm used to having at least 1, sometimes even 2 midterms. That means you have only 1 exam that determines if you're going to pass or fail a class, which is something you should keep in mind if you're considering to apply to a Swiss university. The second thing that I want to talk about is how to get a job here in Switzerland. Again, if you're someone from the European Union, life is a little bit easier, but if you're not, you have to have a work permit to be able to find something here. My experience in this field is when I applied for a job, they usually called me back with the question, do you have a valid work permit here? And if the answer is no, most probably, no matter how much they liked you, how much they will want to hire you, they generally go with another candidate. So their first priority is people who already have a work permit, and it is not super easy to find sponsorships from companies here. So keep that in mind if you're someone coming from a non-European Union country to Switzerland, that it might be hard to find a job. Number 3 is of course language. Switzerland, as you probably know, have 4 languages. There's an Italian part, there's a French part, there's a German part, and there's a 4th language called Rätoromansch, I think. But you don't really hear many people speak that language. It's a very old Swiss language. That's why you probably end up in a place where they speak one of those 3 languages that I just mentioned. Zurich is in the German-speaking part, and the Swiss German, I should say, is completely different than normal German, the German that people speak in Germany. I've heard German people, especially coming from Berlin and around that area, coming to Switzerland, saying that they don't understand Swiss German for the first couple of weeks. It is really hard for them, and that was also my experience. I already knew a lot of German when I came here, but Swiss German is something completely different, so you should keep that in mind. On the daily conversations, they will tell you something in Swiss German and you might not understand it, even if you know German. But with that said, you can totally learn German here, and if you know German, you can totally get Swiss German classes here. But I think the best part of it is almost everyone speaks perfect English in this country, especially Zurich area. It is a city where 50% of people are internationals. That makes daily life so easy. Of course, if you're looking for a job, you might want to consider learning German, but for your day-to-day conversations, English will be absolutely enough for you to survive here in Zurich. Let's talk about the money. Of course, when you say Switzerland, most people think about money because it's one of the richest countries out there. I want to talk about their currency a little bit. Of course, Switzerland is in Europe. It is not part of the EU, although it is part of the Schengen area. So they are not EU, but they're part of the EU visa system. But they have their own currency. They don't use euros, they use Swiss francs. You might need to check the conversion rate if you're not going to earn your money here in Switzerland. There are two things that I want to talk about. One is the cost of living. Here, everything is super duper expensive. You have to be prepared for that. I think Switzerland is one of the most expensive countries out there. You can easily pay 2-3 francs on a bottle of water out there for just a small little plastic bottle of water. The good thing is they usually have fountains and places where you can refill your water bottles, but life in general is very expensive. Rents are expensive. Food is very expensive, so this is an expensive country. You should keep that in mind. The second thing is that they pay incredibly high salaries. So yes, life is expensive, but you earn as much money here. So when you compare it, it is very similar to other European countries. However, if you're not going to earn your money here and you're going to spend it here, that could be a little bit of a problem, but otherwise it's a high paying and expensive country to live in. Another topic that I want to touch really briefly is the social life here. We are not living in a city center, we're living in a smaller village, and almost everything closes around 8. Which is something that I'm not used to. I come from Istanbul where life goes on 24/7. Here it is very different. You can't shop after 8 for food. Sundays, every possible grocery store is closed, so you have to be prepared a little bit. I'm sure there are some open little shops in the city center where if there's an emergency you can probably get something, but life is not as active here. Zurich alone is 300,000 people and Istanbul is 15 million, I think now. So I understand why there's a difference, but if you're coming from a bigger city, if you're coming from a crowded city, you might find that a little too quiet, I might say. But of course, the quality of life is absolutely out of this world. It is really, really nice to see that everybody is super respectful. The streets are extremely clean, public restrooms are extremely clean, trains are extremely clean, and they're almost always on time. Everything works quite nicely here, like a Swiss watch. And I think that gives you a certain comfort and luxury feel already living here. If you're looking for a life that is a little less hectic, a little more organized, a little high in quality, I think Switzerland might be a good place for you. You have to keep that in mind that you have to have a health insurance here, you have to pay for that, and that could be quite expensive. And some random facts, they're really good with recycling. You have to recycle your paper, your glass, your aluminum waste, cartons, plastic bottles, milk bottles, all kinds of recycling happens in this country, and sometimes they come and collect it from your apartment and sometimes you have to bring it to the collection point. But yeah, you have to recycle if you're going to live here. If you're living in a smaller village here in Switzerland, people generally say good morning, good evening as you walk down the street. It is very nice indeed. It doesn't happen in bigger cities, but especially in this little village that we live in, we already know all of our neighbors and they're very friendly people. So prepare yourself that somebody might say something like "Grüezi" when you're walking down the street, which is a super nice greeting and it can just brighten up your day. Of course, if you're into nature, if you're into outdoor sports, if you're into skiing, hiking, all that stuff, this country is perfect, perfect, perfect. It is so beautiful and it is so convenient to go and do those sports. I personally am not into outdoor sports so much, but if you are, and if you're not getting super cold super fast, I think this is a good place to live or to visit. But let me tell you, it can get quite cold. It snows most of the winter and it rains most of the year, and the summers are generally not that warm, so keep that in mind also when you're packing to come to Switzerland. As a wrap up, I personally think that this country is perfect after a certain age, after you establish your living situation, after you already have a rhythm in your life. If you're someone who's trying to experiment and if you're trying to get to know more cultures, maybe this might not be the country to settle for you. Maybe you can consider it a little later in life, especially after a big city like Istanbul in my case. This was like a 2.5 year long vacation, and I think it is time for us to move on to the next step of our lives. Also, if you're someone who is not going to spend so much money here, but you want to save a little bit for the future, I think Switzerland could be a good option to come work for a couple of years and enjoy the natural natural beauties here. If you have any comments or any questions about living in Switzerland, please leave them down in the comment section and I'll answer them all, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next videos. Bye!